It's morphin' time.
From the very beginning, when I met with Dean, there was the tenet that it had to be grounded. You know, so when I first met with Dean, it was all about whatever we do has to feel real and has to feel visceral and has to feel as if we were able to really shoot these things.
And what's great about Sean is that he's a storyteller. So everything that we're doing is not just about the shot or the spectacle, it's about the story of the moment. And, you know, he's been instrumental in terms of things like Act 3, where, you know, the script can only get you so far. It's got to be about the previs. You've got to know every moment to a T before you're shooting anything, because there's so many elements that have to marry together months and months and months down the line. So you really can't wing that stuff.
There were a lot of people that said, "Why don't you just shoot it all on a green screen?" And it's like, well, you know, a lot of films do that when you can't build huge spaceships, although we're building some pretty huge spaceships here. But we wanted to base as much of this in reality as possible.
Very different from your normal superhero show, while maintaining the basic premises and the basic magic that made Power Rangers what it is and what it has become over 23, 24 years.
We definitely didn't want this to just be a film that was full of visual effects that just started to wash over you because they had no true meaning.
And to have a collaborator whose focus is on story is fantastic, and he's got a great sense of humor, and he shares the sense of humor of the movie, I think. So we're always having fun and trying to bring fun into the spectacle, so it's not just a, you know, a CG bonanza.
So we both agreed from the get-go about trying to avoid the overly digital sort of camera moves and things like that. And so we do have some CG camera moves in this movie, but even then we agree that, you know, whatever it is, it has to feel based in something that a drone could shoot, or something that you could shoot with a crane, or, you know, or a spider cam. So there's always, whatever moves we have are based in some reality. And a lot of it actually is based on real, like a lot of the plates we shot were based on, you know, were drone plates, were, you know, big technocrane shots, were whatever, but they were definitely based on, and the final shots in the movie were based on real camera moves.
From the start of every design, we were very conscious of the rules of the things that we were designing. So every Zord has its own principle in how it moves, in what its characteristics are, its weight, its speed.
But the biggest challenge was taking the Zords that were inherited from production design and making them work within our movie, and one of the biggest things was the scale.
The Zords! Pretty cool, right? They take on the form of the most powerful organism on the planet. When these Zords formed, dinosaurs reigned supreme.
The scale of the Zords are all based around the scale of the cockpit. And so looking at the designs we received, if we had built them exactly as we had them, they would barely even fit in the roads that we knew we were going to be filming in.
I think it's very exciting because it's a huge scale. It's different from the 90s. Like everything else in this film, it is an updated version of, or an altered version, like it's a reimagining, right?
Early on, when we were working with our previous company, with Third Floor, one of the first things we did was we just took these previs models and just sort of scaled them to try to find out what is a good size, you know, relative to a human being, what would look cool, and we just placed a couple of just very rough cameras just to kind of figure out what would look right, and showed them to Dean, and came up with it. We said, okay, look, at 80% of the design scale, they're going to look great. The only problem was you can't just scale it down by 80% because now all of a sudden the cockpit is too small. So we had to keep the cockpit at human scale and then kind of remodel and reimagine how that cockpit would actually integrate with the rest of the Zord.
So the Zords started going also down the way of the costumes, where there's a skin layer and then an exoskeleton layer, which becomes sort of like a roll cage protection. So that really informed the design of the Zords and sort of took it into a very original direction, I thought.
And that sort of design agenda carries through to everything that you're making all the way up to the Megazord.
The Megazord was a challenging design because we did start from one big image of the Megazord that was an approved image that the studio and everyone was feeling really good about. How do we take an image that is, it was detailed, but it didn't have every possible piece of the Zord, featured. How to take that and extrapolate a design that was going to work for the movie.
We're like one big Zord, like a Mama Zord, or no, that sounds lame. A Megazord.
In the TV series, each Zord didn't break apart. It would become like one would be the leg and the other would be the arm and the chest. And Dean and I felt like might be a little childish for the look of this Megazord, so we thought maybe we would break all the Zords apart and they would sort of morph to become the Megazord. So you can see, like, there's parts of the tiger in here, and then there's the wings of the pterodactyl come apart and become the wings of the creature. And they're more weapons as opposed to wings, because you can see he's got engines that fly, but he can use those wings that they come over, and they could be like almost like a praying mantis and all sorts of things. So that's how we broke the language of the Megazord and sort of opened up the design palette a bit more, where we could do some cool stuff.
This was all designed by Scanline. So Scanline took all the parts from the Zords. They had the one approved image, and they sort of kit bashed and kind of just started playing and putting it all together, and also bearing in mind, making sure that it was an animatable asset, making sure that it was riggable and that there wouldn't be all kinds of weird interpenetrations. And also the other thing was we didn't have any design for the back of Megazord. So the back was completely created by Scanline.
And then just using the inner skin layer of the Zords that could come and stretch open and give arms and muscles, and it would rather than, we're sort of getting into the territory of Transformers, but to get away from that, this is much more of an organic, living shape, but because of the inner skin layer being able to change and morph like muscles. So it was sort of this inner layer and outer layer riffing off the suits.
We justified in our heads as being sort of like if you were to crack open a Zord, that there might be layers and layers and layers of this sort of like expandable metallic webbing.
First time I seen the artwork for the Zords was on my Skype conversation with Dean, and I totally lost my mind, because we remember how the Zords looked from, the older show and then the movie, and it's like that's what I was expecting for this one. And then when he showed them to me, I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Hashtag makeover. Oh, nice wiggle, Jason. I call this the algebra. Whoa!
How did you even do that?
Each Zord was designed riffing off the dinosaur or the creature that was in the original series. So with the Red Ranger, his is the T-Rex, and that, once again, was the lead creature design. Oddly enough, even though it has a very defined shape, it was the hardest to design because, one, there's the Transformer dinosaur, so we had to stay away from that look, and but also it's just quite an odd shape to make look really cool in a vehicle.
The whole time we didn't shoot the Zords until like the end, right? So that was one of those things where throughout the movie you felt like, all right, we're getting closer and this and that, and as our characters grow, we start to know our characters more, and then we earn the Zord. So working in the cockpit was like, okay, I finally made it here. So what am I gonna do with it, right? I'm not going the right way. Wait, Jason, I'm going backwards. Why am I going backwards? How did I even put it in reverse?
In a weird way, the Zords have come for me to define the Power Ranger experience, in the sense that they have to be two things equally. They have to be cool with all the kind of gadgets and functional abilities that you want a warship essentially to be, but they also have to be fun. They're being driven by teenagers.
Because each Zord already kind of had its theme, you had your Sabretooth, you have your Mastodon, you have your Triceratops, T-Rex, and Pterodactyl. They already kind of were based on something that was, tried and true within the mythology of the Power Rangers universe. We weren't really going to mess with any of that. But some of the stuff that we did have to kind of figure out was how to sell the idea that these kids are able to just jump into this Zord and magically be able to control them.
They will be an extension of you, and their power is all but limitless.
Even at the design phase, we're talking about, well, how does each of their individual cockpits control it, and what do they need to do to control it, and how does one part of it relate to the other part of it?
I think it was Dean's idea to have them sort of like lock in to something, as if something grabs them within the Zord. And so I thought, well, if you take maybe something that looks sort of like the Alpha 5 technology and integrate that into the Zord, and we end up doing that. So now we have, when you see the movie, you'll see something that almost looks like Alpha 5's technology, but it's color-coded for each Zord, and it sort of reaches out and it grabs one of the, and sort of locks into one of the diamonds of the Ranger suit.
But you're not ready for this power. When you morph, your armor will make you one with the Zords.
And we actually came up with, when I sat in the Zord cockpit for the first time on set, I had a book that we created that was the flight manual, and what each control does and how you need to pull each control to do X, Y, and Z. That obviously you pull it, nothing happens, but this is what will happen when we've created the entire world around it.
Bring it on.
Everyone, let's go!
I had the actors learn that, and on set we were very conscious about staying true to those things.
They gave us so much information and so many visuals on what it was gonna look like and had to have an idea of how the scenes were gonna roll out. So when we were dealing with green screen and we were in this little pod, we really felt like we were in our Zords. At least for myself, like I really was visualizing like when we're in battle and what that's gonna look like and how everyone else's Zord's gonna look.
Welcome to the most popular ride at Power Ranger Land.
It was very physical, super physical.
Manual, I need the manual. English, English, English. 中文，中文，停车，停车呀 ！Okay, it's not made in China. Oh no 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 no!
And boom, crash through something.
Like everything you see on screen, we're actually physically exerting ourselves because we're having to film in the suit in the Zord. So, sitting in that suit, it's hot, and then the entire machine is moving around, you're getting banged around, and also you get so into it because Dean's such a great director that he gives such good cues that you get so into it. I can't really distinguish the moments when the machine's actually moving or I'm so into it, I'm just gearing myself around.
Billy, I have an idea. Ready?
Yeah? For what exactly?
I have to admit, I love my Zord. My Zord, I think, is the best. Because I get to fly. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to fly, right?
Jason, are you okay?
I think what's cool is that you feel like, man, if I just had one of those machines, well, what could I do? And we shot all of the kids in real cockpits that we had built on a real gimbal that's really moving around and simulating the motion of the Zord. And so I think it feels very integrated, their performance to the visual effect component.
We got it.
Come on!
Crush them!
Okay, fire!
So I think they're the things that I get most excited about. When you watch the scenes with the Zords, you're going to laugh, and you're going to be hopefully going, oh man, that's really cool.
Zordon's incredible, his huge, big, pixelated face in this wall and the CG, it looks incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Zordon in the show was a hologram, and I feel like holograms have been done a lot lately, and we were trying to think of how's a new way to do a hologram, and instead we went away from that and try to make it more analog.
Asked. Come forward, please.
Do we have a choice?
Don't think so.
English. Si exportans, Wintan Procano. Look! It's Zordon!
We went through a bunch of different concepts of what Zordon would look like, from liquid type hologram to a fully weird liquid thing that you might even step into and would surround you, until we landed on this idea of something very physical.
What was the actual mechanics that drove him? So I think they ran like fluid sims, so that if his head moved around, it would generate ripples in the wall, and those ripples and the facial capture were all kind of combined to create like a height map, and the height map was basically driving all these pins doing their thing.
And the idea of millions of pins that create his image.
Zordon is just enormous. So you're working with these sort of epic scales, which makes it more interesting as an actor and I think as a viewer.
And once we had that concept and felt really good about that concept, it just became a process that took over a year of trial and error to bring that idea to life. We had some concept art, but it's really hard to translate concept art like that into what ultimately becomes a kinetic sculpture.
You must bring them back, all of the Rangers. You must train your team to stop Rita before she has the strength to find the crystal.
I've done it several times. I've done the mocap before, so you just trust that what the director's vision is will come to fruition once it all is said and done. They want it to. They are looking for the actor to be able to be expressive in their vocal characterization as well as their physical one.
So, Bryan, what we were talking about is when you're taking in the ship, it's sort of from here to here, along this pole, and then when you pick a person, any person, it's just below this camera.
Correct.
And it's funny, I said to Bryan when I told him he was gonna, when he said he wanted to be in the movie and what he was gonna look like, and I said, don't worry, your face will be in the film.
Yeah. So all of your facial expression is, but then we'll take over the movement.
And he saw the movie the other day and really liked how he had turned out, and we were talking about how you feel his performance in the wall, and I said, listen, I told you your face was going to be in the wall. I had no idea if that was true.
We are shooting some facial capture, and we're using a really advanced system that gives you a full surface scan of the actor's face. So you get all of the nuanced details of the actor himself. Later on, we apply that to a 3D mesh, and that's what you'll end up seeing in the movie. So this is some of the 3D data from this morning's test. This is one frame of Bryan in the system, and you can see what we actually get. We're able to rotate around it. It's got the texture maps applied to it. Can you just drop the texture maps out, please,
There's a magnetic one which works sometimes.
And you can see the actual 3D surface is captured. You put on a wireframe as well and just show some of the detail. So we're able to capture 60 times per second his face at this resolution.
And his performance is really nicely captured.
While doing voice work, I don't remember the last time that I did any voice work where they didn't video you as you're doing the voice work.
You must bring them back, all of the Rangers. You must train your team to stop Rita before she has the strength to find the crystal.
Okay. They're always having cameras on you so that the animators can use the actor's inflection and facial gestures and things like that for that character.
Wait, these are them? They're so small.
And so Dean would talk to me about not, can you grimace more here, or can you smile at that, but rather, can you be frustrated a little more here at this point because of their lack of teamwork? And at this point, can you get a sense of calm appreciation?
I think if you play that line, I think that's all about, I think there's two intentions.
The subtextual of
For this, I think the subtext is, I was never worthy. And if I lose another team, I will know for sure that I was never worthy either. I let my team die, and if I let this team die, it's confirmation that I should never have been the Red Ranger.
So that's very different from Get Me Out of This Wall.
Yes.
So he was directing me as a director would in live action, just sensory, thinking about, oh, this pleases me and this doesn't please me, and you just do that and trust again that that what your face and voice is conveying is accurate.
And Dave Morley, the supervisor at Image Engine, he and I were able to really talk almost on an artist level, and they did a fantastic job of incorporating facial capture of Bryan Cranston.
But there are limitations to it, as far as this one was, specifically because my character was coming in a three-dimensional version through a wall. So I just try to keep my head. You don't want any movement this
Forward
way.
and back.
Forward
Yeah,
and back
kind
is...
of minimize that. You can, you still got to act, look around, do what you need.
Right. But doing that is...
Probably going to take you out of focus from
Yeah.
the canvas.
Okay. And so I had limited mobility. So how can I get agitated and not move my head? So it's kind of like doing it a couple times and realizing, oh, okay, now I have to have a certain element of concentration about not moving my head or not going up and back. Whereas in live action, you don't think about that at all.
You know, and finally we got there. And it was a long process of trying to figure out the balance, again, between seeing the texture of his actual face and the geometry of his prosthetics, which gives you a likeness to what you've seen earlier in the movie, versus the texture of the pins and making that feel integrated into a CG environment. But a lot of trial and error until we got where we got to.
Alpha 5, why didn't they morph?
I don't know, sir. It's disturbing. Very disturbing. This might take some time.
We don't have time.
Well, if they can't morph, what are we supposed to do?
They'll have to train without armor. They need to prepare.
Without armor? Sir, that'll be very painful.
Take them down to the pit.
All right, follow me. We're going to the pit.
Alpha 5 is cute and cuddly, and his little robot, it's a bit like R2-D2 in Star Wars. You know, that sort of character plays that role, but all the kind of previous stuff that I've seen is very, very polished.
The Alpha 5 was a really unique challenge because, yeah, he doesn't really have a mouth. You know, he has eyes, but they're not like eyes that we're used to. He doesn't have eyebrows, you know, so it's again, difficult to show some of those expressions that you normally would be able to reach with a character. But we had Bill Hader, which is great, but we didn't have Bill Hader until later on.
My brain is, oh, my brain just went out. Hold on. No, come back.
What's tricky about bringing sort of Bryan in and Bill after you've shot a bunch of stuff is you're trying to balance what my vision was when I was there on the day without their expertise, and then being able to be open to a lot of creativity that they're going to bring.
Yes, the coins, the mysteries of the universe. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Why is Taco Cat spelled backwards Taco Cat? I don't know.
It's interesting, yeah, we did a whole pass of the whole movie, a couple of days of recording him, and it was almost all wrong, The initial idea for Alpha 5 was much more of a curmudgeon, like, oh man, you guys woke me up and now I gotta, he was much more kind of grumpy and making fun of them, and it was almost like insult humor. And then by the end of the movie, it was like, oh, these guys are all right, But they tested it and it didn't test well. People didn't like seeing Alpha 5 make fun of the Rangers.
But in terms of animation, their animators just kind of went at it and just created this character before we even met Bill Hader, and we had a lot of really great temp stuff that the editors were able to cut with and build sequences. So by the time we actually got to Bill, he was able to see sequences with this sort of temp alpha thing in there, and I'm sure that he looked at that and probably whatever his character was more or less incorporating some aspect of what we'd already kind of temped.
And actually when I saw Alpha 5 animated in the space and saw the scenes with him in it, it was really helpful because it changed my whole performance and just made him brighter and kind of more positive and excited.
Now watch me. You run, slip the punch, grab. Oh! Yeah! Slip, grab, slip! Yes! Yes! Woo!
And then
Bill's performance was motion captured, and then Image Engine took his motion capture and augmented it with, lots of additional animation, but we still were able to capture his essence, and then of course, you know, a lot of his subtle head moves and things like that were translatable. I mean, the things that you wouldn't think of without having the motion capture that just kind of happened naturally when Bill was wearing the mocap suit.
Element of surprise.
You gotta be
on
prepared.
three. One, two.
Element of surprise, Billy. Ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Element of surprise. You just heard what I said, right? Oh, I just did it again. Come on. All right, Billy, here we go. Element of surprise. 1, 2. You need to learn the element of surprise.
The interesting thing was my eyes and everything because of the saucer-like shape of my head, so I had to kind of like hold my head like this, so my eyes are kind of here, you know? And so it was a really interesting process. I don't know if any of it made it into the movie, but we did all my scenes. I mean, we did everything, you know? In one day, one long day, we did everything, so.
Oh, I love this part. This is good.
Yes, very good, Billy. It's called the Zeo Crystal. And every
Zero crystal.
The universe has a piece of the crystal buried
That's cool.
inside.
That's cool. Be like. So he's going. It's called the Zeo Crystal. Zeo Crystal.
Yeah. Yes, very good, Billy. It's called the Zeo Crystal.
Zero crystal.
And every planet in the universe.
Zero.
Zeo.
Zeo here. Okay. Zeo crystal.
Something we discovered as we were creating it, that in some ways you are losing half of an actor's performance when you don't get to see his features. And we did a lot of ADR with Bill, and again, it was an iterative process where we would lay it down, come into the cutting room, put it in, see what was working, see what wasn't working, show it to him, talk about it, go and do another session, and it just became a constant creative process to try and hone it so that you were getting all of the emotion that you needed to get.
The coins have chosen you, Fox. Now you must protect the Zeo Crystal and life on Earth.
Because we are the Power Rangers?
They're small but stupid, sir.
And then it became a sound design and animation process where we started to add blinking to Alpha 5, where in the sound design we created an entire library of kind of emotional sounds that Alpha would have that sounded emotional but also appropriately robotic.
No.
And that, between Bill's performance, the animation, and then the sound design, we created an arsenal that hopefully would communicate all of the emotion at any given moment.
I'm one part of the character. I mean, it's me. I provide the voice and kind of the attitude and stuff, but who also supplies the attitude and movement and everything are these amazing animators who animate Alpha 5. So it really is, it's not just, it says Alpha 5 and my name next to it, but it's really a whole team of people who make that character work.
We will kill you.
Kill me? How?
There's 5 of us.
Yes, I know. I've been waiting for you. Wait, where's the other guy? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there he is. All of you.
In a spaceship buried underground. How long have you been waiting?
What's today? Monday?
Yeah.
Then 65 million years.
It sounds so obvious, but even in an animated movie, you're seeing so much in the animation of the face and the expressions. And when you take that away to some degree, it puts you at a deficit that we had to use other things, hopefully, to overcome.
The stakes are very personal in our film, and all of those visual effects accent that. So each of them have meaning, have some humor, something that speaks to the Ranger's character with almost every movement that they make as they're protecting Angel Grove and their families and friends against this threat that Rita has posed against them.